bringing attention to the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Free Fall. Good evening, everyone. This is Andy Steele. Thank you again for listening. Tonight my guest is Reed McCandless, and this is a guy with a lot of energy. He's a former congressional candidate. He's actually still a congressional candidate because his campaign is continuing on as a write-in. And he came awake to Building 7 and 9/11 Truth a couple of years ago, just as his political career was starting. So you can imagine the dilemmas that was going on in his brain as he came awake to this and as he started off on this path. So that sets him apart from everybody else because he openly acknowledges that Building 7 needs to be investigated, and he's very passionate about it. He's very passionate about changing America and fixing everything that's gone wrong here. So you're going to want to hear this guy because he's very interesting, and he's talking about starting a new political party that will challenge the big guys, and he makes some very bold predictions in this interview. So we'll see what happens with that in the next decade. But if his predictions come true and we're able to challenge the 2 major parties and put a president in the White House, then you heard about it here first on 9/11 Freefall. So save this broadcast. It's going to be a very important one. But also, too, we talk about how you can participate in the process, regardless of what side of the political spectrum you are on, whether you're conservative or liberal. If you know that Building 7 was obvious controlled demolition, you can participate, you can run for office, and you can include this in your platform. Imagine that. Imagine candidates all over the country talking about Building 7 on both sides of the political spectrum. That would drive the establishment gatekeepers insane. They wouldn't know what to do about it. It would be a revolution of ideas, and we're all part of it. It's still continuing, and it's not going to end until we have justice for the victims and their families, and just have truth acknowledged in this country. Physics, truth can't be ignored, no matter how much propaganda you throw at the people who talk about it. So stay tuned. I'm going to play that interview for you in just a moment. Before I do play that interview for you, I'm going to do what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families, and all of the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that starting now. And that is 10 seconds.
Reed McCandless is a former candidate for Congress. He withdrew from his architecture studies at the University of Idaho to run for the U.S. House of Representatives. He ran in 2012 and 2014. He'll be talking more about his background and about his political career today. Reed, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
It's good to be here, Andy. Appreciate it.
Now, you have a very great background. I just gave a brief intro on it, so tell our audience a little bit more about yourself before we get into the 9/11 issues.
Well, you know, Andy, I found out about this Building 7 business about 2.5 years ago. But before we get into that, I've been a farm kid. Grew up in Montana and Idaho. Was active in sports and music in school. Grew up, went on a Mormon mission to Southern California. Married, had 4 children, worked in the computer industry a little bit. In '99, I wound up driving a truck. And since '99, Andrew, I've been about half the time I've been in a over-the-road truck somewhere in the United States. When I started running for Congress in 2012, I was not aware of Building 7, and I thought anyone that brought up things about 9/11 being a conspiracy, I steered away from them. I remember one guy, I owe him a big apology. His name was Bill. He was a flatbedder. He was an ex-Marine, and he spoke Farsi, some Farsi. And he was trying to tell me something one day and at a truck stop in Utah, and I just kind of downplayed it and said, hey, I can't listen to this. And since then, I've realized that I owe Bill a big apology. The reason how I found out about Building 7, like I say, was about 2.5 years ago after I decided to run for the United States House of Representatives. And I was up in just north of Dickinson, North Dakota, in our shop, the company I was working for, and the welder came over to the mechanics. They were at the cash register there, and he pulled up, he says, "Hey guys, watch this, look at this." And he pulled up a YouTube video, and he showed us Building 7, going down. This was February of 2012, okay? The implications of that, you do the numbers. I learned about this in February of 2012. It wasn't until almost 2 full years later that I could even begin to get my head around what I was looking at. I think sometimes you hear about people that live in denial of whether it's abuse or whatever. It's like the human mind can't get their mind around something that they've been exposed to, and so they just put it on hold. Well, and I think that's basically what happened to me, and it wasn't until about 4 months ago that I really started dealing with this situation that I was watching videos of on YouTube. And as you know, there's no way around it. And I was talking to a fellow, John O'Malley, and he was telling me how when he found out what had gone on with Building 7, and that, of course, led to some other things, realizing some other things, your world completely changes, and there's no going back. And, at this point, there is no going back for me either.
No, that's how it is for a lot of people. It's a one-way door, John O'Malley has described it as, and he's been a guest on this show a couple of times, and a great speaker. Love to listen to him, and he really captures that feeling, that oh my God feeling. And it's for people who are embedded in the political establishment or people who are seeking office. This puts even more pressure on them because now you've got this new reality that's obviously going to affect how you move forward with what you want to do and getting that congressional seat. So just for some clarification for me, now you say you woke up to this about 2 years ago and now you're beginning to wrap your mind around it. Did you include Building 7 in your platform when you were running for Congress in 2012?
I didn't. I really, I'm so new at this. Like John was talking to you about earlier a few weeks ago, he's a novice, and I don't have any backers yet. And at that time, I was anticipating, honestly, being in politics at some point. Okay, Andrew, but, that day never comes. Like you have this goal in the future. Well, when that kind of hit, when that lightning hit of realizing, hey, it was time to do something, and I started running for Congress, I was living my life pretty much like most of your viewers. We don't have no organization. We don't really have a lot of personal friends or associates that, can bite off something like this. And so I'm just kind of been a lone man out here, but I think really now that's changing. And even in 2014, I really didn't mount any sort of threat to the incumbent, who was a great guy, who, by the way, apparently, his name is Raul Labrador. Apparently, his staff told me several weeks ago that he is aware of Building 7, and just a side note. But, and I must add right now, when I ran in 2012, there was 2 participants in the Republican primary. I got 20% of the vote, but this last time in 2014, there was 5 people in the primary. And the incumbent, Labrador, essentially got the same amount, 80% of the vote, but the remaining 20-some was split between 4 other contestants, me being one of those. And so my showing in the Republican primary was laughable in some ways, but in some ways that doesn't deter me at all. And let me say at this point, Andrew, if I can, I have not given up on this fall race. the general election. And so I'm mounting now, as we speak, a write-in campaign for the United States House of Representatives, District 1 in the state of Idaho.
Well, that's the way to do it. I mean, again, keep your name out there, and whatever the process is for writing in candidates, I'm not even exactly sure how to go about doing that. Maybe you can go over our audience, especially for people in District 1 in Idaho, how they can go about doing a write-in process in case they're not familiar with that, how to go about doing that.
Right. At this point, the only options I have is to be a write-in candidate, so I won't be considered a partisan. So I'm not part of the Republican Party on the ballot, but what the citizens can do is just go to the ballot, ask the people that are running the elections where you go to vote, ask them point blank, if I want to write in Reed McCandless as a candidate for the United States House of Representatives, where do I do that? And they need to know how to spell my name, first and last name. They've got time to figure that out. And all I have to do is file with the state office in Boise, which will be doing. And that's all there is to it.
Excellent. So basically, again, folks, this is the kind of stuff that you need to do, regardless of what you think the outcome is going to be, because right now this is just the beginning of our guest's political career. And so you get his name out there, you get people knowing that name, and then you get somebody who's aware of Building 7 potentially in office in the future. So these are just the first steps to what's going to be a great awakening, a great political awakening, I see, coming to us sometime in the next decade if we are persistent and don't give up. And so it's very important what you're doing, the fact that you run for office, you've gotten your feet wet, you're charging towards the goal, and now you're aware of this issue, and you're a sincere guy. I don't think that Washington, D.C. would change you or make you silent on this topic anymore. I'm curious, what were the topics, the issues that got you to run for Congress to begin with?
Well, in the mid-'90s, about 96, to be exact, is I felt something would be in my future, but I think in the summer of 96 is when I guess the realization personally came to me that, this is something that I need to do. I didn't have the specific office of running for the House of Representatives in mind at that time. So if you do the numbers, that's well over 15 years ago. And so I was just anticipating this, living my life, trying to get my ducks in a row. But in hindsight, I realized, Andrew, that even though a lot of the things that I attempted to do or could have done and didn't do, a lot of the things that weren't pleasant in my life, they really have prepared me. Disappointment does something to you that success can't. And so, even though I didn't have a lot of those things taken care of or got my ducks in a row, so to speak, the disappointment, I think, has prepared me more than anything, Andrew. And I found myself in 2011 in Moscow, Idaho. I'm from Blackfoot, Idaho. So Moscow, if you look at a map, it's about as far away as you can get from Blackfoot. You go up I-15 up through Montana, Missoula, into Coeur d'Alene and south, or you can go west to Boise, and then up by US 95 up to Moscow. But I went up there to go to school, and I wasn't anticipating running for the House or anything. As a matter of fact, when I was in Blackfoot, I called up this guy I'd become impressed with and gave him the 10-minute, this is what you need to do. You need to run for U.S. House against Mike Simpson, who I'm sure is a fine fellow. But I gave this guy, this is what you need to do. And it's funny because having gone up to Moscow, just months later, I found I was having to take my own advice. I didn't go up there to run for House. I didn't go up there to get in a different district. But as fate will have it, I find that is the district that I'm best to represent. I think that's the district that has the dynamic that can really start an avalanche. And I think this concept of an avalanche is going to happen. I think it's going to catch on. If I could keep going here, Andrew, I think one thing that I've realized in the past month, I'll say, is that the people with the power are the voters, are the Republican voters in the state of Idaho. That's where the power is. And I think so many of us, we feel like we're alone and that, what does it matter if I take off work and go to the polls, or what is it going to matter if I'm not going to be in town to get an absentee ballot, or what is it going to matter? Why should I go register, at the courthouse as a Republican or a Democrat, whatever it may be, or what is it going to matter if I, go to the general election and cast my vote? But I really have realized that it's the voter that has the power, and when they realize it, that's when we're going to see something change. And let's just take a congressional race, such as the one that I've been in and am in right now, as a write-in campaign in Idaho in the 1st Congressional District for the United States House of Representatives. When those people realize that they have some say, they're not just one person isolated. They will put people in Congress, even if they have great people there now, and they really like. But if those great people that are in there right now won't step up to something like we're talking about, like what happened at Building 7 and the rest of that, then why not give someone such as myself, and there's others, a chance? That's what I'm asking the voters to do, is give me a chance.
Right, and the thing is, too, is when people start participating in the process, no doubt politicians, people in Congress, even currently in Congress, look at that, and they look where public opinion is going. And, people have seen the questions posed on C-SPAN to congressmen, and they get angry. I mean, so I fluctuate on my views on this. I'm getting more of a mature view on it, I guess, by saying this, that these are human beings that we're dealing with. And so the fact that they may elude the issue, that they may even put on a phony outrage show in some cases for even bringing it up, shows that they're afraid. They're afraid for what would happen to them if they actually spoke the truth on this, or they're just not informed of it. And so if they start seeing more public support, open public support, unapologetic support for a new investigation into Building 7, that will embolden our congressmen to be more open to the idea of supporting it. And so that's why the political process is so important. It's not just about sending some guy to Congress. It's about letting your voice be heard and basically letting them know where the public's pulse is, putting their finger on the pulse of America and letting them know what Americans are really concerned about, because that influences their political future. So by participating in the process and writing in someone's name like Reed's here, you're sending a message, and you know that they hear this, and they know this is where the public is moving in the direction of. So, no, you're absolutely right. The political process is even more than just sending somebody to office. It's about letting them know what issues America really cares about. Now, I'm curious, for running for office, and you run on the Republican Party, what is that like? I mean, tell our audience, because most people have never run for Congress before. Tell us some of the details, the story behind it, what you had to go through, how you can get started doing something like that.
That's a good question, and I think I'd like to answer that because, just some personal insights I had. Just expecting to be in the political realm, at some point, like I said, over 15 years ago. But when kind of the lightning struck for me, I guess it would have been October of 2011, you go through some really interesting things, in your heart, in your soul. And I think when somebody realizes that this is something that they should do, I think they go through different stages. One is disbelief. One is trying to get out of it. One is trying to say, why me? There's got to be other people that are more qualified that would be better at this. And so that, to me, that's been really just the internal process, Andrew. As you're asking me what it's like to run, and so, and you see what happens to people that get in the media, essentially. or become a public person, and it can strike terror into your heart. You think of those lives that are going to be affected, like your family, your children, your associations, people that have been friendly to you in the past. Will they abandon you? Will the secrets that you have that you would like to forget are maybe not pleasant in your past, that you made mistakes in the past, those are going to come out. But ultimately, you have to ask yourself, and this is something, Andrew, I asked myself about 4 weeks ago when I was driving up through the state of Idaho. I left work and went out there and going, wow, really? Am I really doing this? What are my odds right now? And so forth. And really the question came to me, and that is, the question is this important? Andrew, we both know what the answer to that is. Yes, it is important. And if it is important, regardless of how unqualified someone may feel, or all the unpleasantness of your past or your personal failings, whatever they may be, they dim in comparison of what the importance is of what they can bring to the table and the change they can provide, the leadership they can provide. And so anyone that's considering this, even if they oppose how I feel, you've got to be honest with yourself and put yourself in second place and put the cause first. I want to tell you, if this was about me, Andrew, I could not do it. I would not do it. But because it is not about me, I can do it. And because it's not about whoever else is thinking about running, they know it's not about them. And if it is just about them, they shouldn't run, probably. Or they can if they want. But if it's about the bigger cause, they need to put their concerns aside and go forward. Now, as far as what is it like, I think I've had a really good experience. I spent a week hunting down newspaper men. Some of them were newspaper women and men. Some of them had time to interview me. Some of them didn't, but I made some personal acquaintances that are meaningful to me that I hope going forward, I expect going forward, that we can kind of nurture those. They can get to know me better. They can get to know what's important to me, and just basically laying the groundwork and putting your disbelief aside and saying, this is going to work. I don't know how. I don't understand. I can't make it work myself, but I'm willing to put myself out there and go through these important steps to show that I care, to show that I can be counted on, to show that I'm fervent in what I'm saying, that I'm willing to bank on this with my own buck, and that I'm not going to be intimidated and run off by whatever power or insinuation or ignorance, whatever it may be, that may stand in my way or attempt to or act like they stand in my way. And so I'm really fired up. I'm motivated. The word is motivated. There will come a time when I start winning elections, and it's going to be sooner than later, Andrew. But I think what I've found is even seeing the other candidates, not just that were running for my office, but people running for, for judgeships or running for Senate, running for governor, really different, a very different, a varied group of people. And I've realized they're really not unlike me. They're regular people. And the thing that will set people apart is if they believe in what they're doing and their cause is the right cause.
That is so true, and I love everything you're saying here, and it reminds me of something a wiser, older person once told me when I was considering a certain career and just wondering if I could do it. I didn't end up pursuing this because I wanted to do other things eventually, but they said this, is that they design professions and systems and things like that, political system, judicial system, so humans can do them. Right? I mean, they don't ever design something that a human can't do. So if anybody out there, forget about politics for a minute. Let's say your dream is to be a doctor, but you don't know if you are good enough to do it or smart enough to do it. They design it. I mean, the doctors, there's humans that are doctors. Like, somebody out there is doing that. Now, you yourself, if you got enough dedication and you want to do it bad enough, you can do it too. All right? There's nothing that's out of your reach if you don't, if you try hard. All right? So, you know, that is what I wanted to state there. But it's funny because you mentioned too about people getting into your personal life and, you know, bringing up things you did 20 years ago or whatever. You know, one of the greatest disservices our media does, while turning a blind eye to issues like Building 7 that are of critical importance, they'll go into somebody's personal life that is absolutely nobody's business. They're not harming anybody. They're not doing anything illegal. They just simply have a certain personal life. Let's say they happen to be homosexual or something like that, right? And then they'll go ahead and broadcast it all over the media to try to make a drama out of it. And that's a way that limits freedom in this country too. All right, that's another way that the press suppresses the rights of individuals by going ahead and broadcasting the personal details of everybody's lives that have no relevance on the issues or don't impact how they would be able to do a certain job. So I think it's absolutely disgusting, and a way to buck that establishment system in the media is to just push forward regardless. You know, I remember growing up and we were reading the Odyssey in school, and there was a picture of Ulysses in the land of the dead. And it was a really dramatic oil on canvas painting, and it showed all these zombies or whatever they were in the land of the dead kind of coming up around him. And Ulysses has his shield over his eyes, and he's got his sword held forward in front of him. And the symbolic meaning I took from that is that when you're fighting evil, when you're fighting injustice, and doing what you got to do, you just have to look away from all of the fear. You just have to shield your eyes from it and just push forward and fight. And so, you know, if you can find a copy of that painting, maybe I'll try to find a copy of it and post it. But that's really the attitude you need to take in doing what you want to do and fighting this fight that we're in right now. So, you know, I wanted to pass that forward. Now, it's funny because they always talk about if you want to run for office, you got to raise money. Now, I understand if you're running for president or something really big like that, or even a senator where it's a whole statewide election. But it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if you're in a congressional district, you should be able to at least mount a really good showing with maybe not as much money, but a lot of volunteer help. And one way that it could be done is by organizing anti-war groups. If you could get Islamic groups who may be questioning the official story of 9/11 together to help out and to just drive to different towns within the district and canvass and do all the work that paid workers do. They call them paid volunteers in some places, which is kind of an oxymoron. But that do all the same kind of work that paid workers do for campaigns, but on a volunteer basis, and just use the motivation of people trying to do the right thing as your weapon. And you could also do a lot of work on social media too, organizing on Facebook, getting messages out, creating a page like that, and make a good showing. Am I wrong about that? Is there something in that analysis that I'm missing?
You know, I think you're right, and I think one thing that I would say to other people that are thinking about doing this, and what I'm, in the midst of doing, and that is to tell yourself that it's okay to be a leader. You know, so many times we walk around and we just in our own little world, and we're afraid to make waves, or somebody else should do this. Well, if you know you should be doing that, then do it, and it's okay. Even if your closest associates are just, nervous as can be about, how they're going to be dragged into it, or, people with your same last name, whether it's a, family member or, associates from your community, you do it anyway. And I had a couple other thoughts there as you were speaking. It escapes me at the moment, Andrew. Go ahead.
Well, no, that's right. And what you say about giving yourself permission to be a leader is dead on. A lot of times people don't think that they themselves are that big of a deal. Who am I to run for office? And they don't see themselves being like the people that you see in Congress right now. However, the goal is not to be like them. It's to be something different, something better, something more normal. You know, I compare it to wanting to be sort of like the congressman of the early 1800s as America was forming, back when it was a public service that you did, you know, when it was like kind of a pain in the butt to be a congressman. You had to do all that traveling, and it was you had to leave your farm and attend to the needs of the country, and a lot of people didn't want to do it for those reasons. And that's kind of what it should be. Again, it shouldn't be a career. It shouldn't be that you're a career politician, you know, that you're making your bread and butter off of this. But again, you know, you don't want to be like what we have now. The purpose is to change that. And again, you know, getting back to worrying about what other people say, or you know, how you're folks with the same last name as you, you know, getting upset because you're out there causing all this controversy, talking about Building 7 in the middle of a congressional campaign. I mean, you got to reconcile this within yourself. Obviously, I say to the listener, but you live for you. You're not living for other people. You don't exist to be a satellite around other people, no matter how much you care about them or love them or whatever. You got to make your own path in life, and if your instinct is telling you to do something, then you need to follow that. I know that better than anybody. So I just wanted to add that on there. Do you have something to say?
Good for you. Good for you, Andrew. That's, you know, and what you're doing, this radio show, that's terrific. You know, I think of ways how people, when they find out things about, let's say, Building 7, okay, how can you find out that there's other people out there that feel like you do? You're afraid, maybe you're not really outgoing, or you didn't go through the truck driving phase in your life, so it's not like you can just talk to anybody about anything. There's a couple of little things that I've thought of that could help your neighbors and help yourself know how you feel, if there's some way that you can show that. And I thought, you know, just a little simple sign in your front yard or by your mailbox, or you could put, you know, make some little custom little sign that says Building 7, you know, initials BLD, you know, BLDG in small, you know, small alphabetical letters, and then the numeral 7, Building 7 on your door of your vehicles. You don't have to be on the radio. You don't have to, you know, give interviews. But I think if people that are fervent about this, and some people can organize to where they can provide some, you know, little signs, or they can provide little magnetic stickers to put on vehicles or so forth. Let me change the subject for just a minute, okay?
Sure.
There's something I want to talk about before we get off, okay? There's a fellow, and people can get on YouTube. They can search this stuff out. There's a fellow I'm sure you're aware of, Andrew. His name is Philip Marshall. He was an airline pilot. He worked, I believe, for the military. He flew Black Ops. This gentleman had written a book called The Big Bamboozle. I have not read it, but apparently it's about 9/11. And according to his friends, he was getting close to publishing a second book. Well, apparently his wife and he were having troubles, and they were on the way of separating, or had separated. But the official story is that this gentleman puts a bullet in his 17-year-old daughter and his, I believe, 13-year-old son, the family puppy dog, and then puts a bullet in his left temple, but he's right-handed. And there's no sign of the transcript for his second book anywhere. And this is what we're dealing with. If people will do this and convince other people, whether they be CIA operatives or people, you know, loners in the Marine Corps, or, you know, as long as people keep doing this and keep this code of silence, okay, I understand when you take a job for the Department of Defense or what have you, there's a certain amount of, you know, privacy, secrecy that is required at times. But what I'm afraid of, Andrew, is this is used in an excuse to make everybody under the federal umbrella, you know, a hit squad against anyone that has anything to say against what's going on. And I want to say, okay, let me just pause for a minute, if I can. I'm really concerned. America is in trouble. I don't care how you slice it. I don't care what party you are and what. Oh, this is the thought I wanted to say earlier. Okay, we're taught left against right, right against left. Okay, I've got to hate so and so because their sexual orientation is different than mine, and they've got to hate me because I hold the standards, maybe out of the scriptures or something like that. Okay? And those arguments, I'm not saying they're invalid or that we should be unconcerned, but what I'm saying is what we're facing now is so much more important and so much greater that we cannot allow things like abortion, things like, homosexuality and things like that to completely divide us to the point where we're fighting each other and we cannot focus on the bigger picture of which things like these assassinations continue they're thriving. No one stands up to them. No one stands up to the media. We're sitting here like pawns. I beg people, I don't care if you're in the United States or out of the United States. We have got a problem so large and so pervasive that nothing is going to stop it unless we do something. And ordinary people, ordinary voters can no longer go to the polls and say, whatever, this will work. The past, actions of the past will no longer be sufficient. People need to get up and do something about it. I plead with people, even if they have a problem with somebody's lifestyle, even if they have a problem with somebody's, financial portfolio or their marital status or what have you. We can fight about this later or fight about it now if you want, but keep it separate from us getting together and doing something about what we're facing. Please.
I agree with you completely. I'm my political philosophy. I'm a registered Republican. I did that so I could vote for Ron Paul when he was coming up. But really, my political philosophy is I'm pretty fiscally conservative. But in terms of people's lifestyle, as long as they're not hurting anybody, I don't care. It doesn't affect my life. I think if everybody kind of took that philosophy, we'd have a lot less problems in this country, and we could focus on on how to make the country better. It sounds like a very politician statement, but it would just eliminate so much nonsense if people just stuck to maintaining their own lives and focusing on the things that actually are hurting the common good in terms of the fiscal stuff. But obviously the most striking and what I focus on every week is this obvious lie that we've been living with for over a decade about what really happened to the Twin Towers and Building 7. And it's not just an incident that happened over a decade ago. It's something that still affects us right now. And it's just such a glaring travesty in our 21st century that something like this can happen, something so obvious, and this lie can be maintained. And I'm aware of Phil Marshall, and actually we had a show we're dedicated to discussing what went on there, but I don't want the audience, and I'm speaking to the audience right now, I don't want people hearing stuff like that and getting all worried that if you post something on Facebook or speak out, someone's going to come and get you. I mean, folks, I have not on wood. Nobody's ever messed with me. I've never had any kind of issues with anybody threatening me. I've never ever felt in danger from anybody. And I've been doing this, doing the show for 2 years, but I've been in 9/11 Truth since about 2006. So if you're just an ordinary person out there saying Google Building 7 and showing up at protests and doing whatever you can, you're going to be fine. And I think a lot of this talk about what the government can do with the surveillance and the drones and all of this is mentioned in order to chill people's free speech, in order to make people self-censor. Years ago when I first started getting into this, I had a girlfriend who was concerned because I was posting something about 9/11 on my MySpace page from her apartment on her internet. So the government's gonna be seeing that it came from her IP address, and they're gonna they're going to come and get me or come and get her or something. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. But it goes to show you this kind of mythos that people have built up about how strong the government is. And they can do, I mean, a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, but they're not going to be going after you because you speak out about Building 7 or 9/11. Now, there's people that can talk, or you can talk about certain incidents where people might have had some critical information that they were going to release, and then they died in some mysterious way. That's new information. And I always say, if you've got something new, some kind of bombshell evidence, don't tease people with it and talk about what you're going to be releasing in a month. Just put it out there on the internet. Send it to sites like InfoWars and the Drudge Report. Send it to me. I'll put it up and let the internet do its thing. That's what it's there for. But just your regular person being an activist, you're going to be fine, okay? And I compare it to that movie Stripes, the movie with Bill Murray where he joins the Army. And during his basic training, there's this guy named Francis, I think, who's just this real jerk. Drama. And he's everybody that ticks him off, he always tells them, "You just made the list, pal." He's got this list of people he's going to get back at, but he never does anything. And finally, the drill sergeant just says to him, simmer down, Francis, and kind of puts him in his place. That's what I kind of think the government is doing. Everybody's going to make some big list that's floating around somewhere that has like tens of thousands of millions of names on it. And I just don't think it's there. I don't think that I think it's a lot of bluster to make people silence themselves, to self-censor. I'm not saying that there's no reason to be concerned or that we shouldn't be standing up against the surveillance stuff, but we can't self-censor ourselves either, because that doesn't lead to anything but doom and gloom, trust me. So I just wanted to put that out there. Did you have something to say?
Well, excuse me, I think a lot of times people want to do things, but when you're not certain in yourself that you're the one that can, step out first, I assure you, I'll step out first for you. And I'm asking people to get on board. I'm not going away, Andrew. I'm 52. I've got a good, 25, 30 years in me. This is never going to get shut down, never, right? Regardless. And so if you want to, jump aboard, trust me, I'm here and I'm going. So, in the future, I don't have some information, contact information right now, but, as the weeks and the months go by, and even in, past the general election, I urge you to, don't lose heart. Hey, what happened to that guy? I heard about him. I'm still, it's still in the process. There'll be ways to find me, and I assure you that you won't have to do this alone. And so I plead with people that maybe disagree with me about some of the other issues in politics. Work with me on this. I'll show respect to you on your issues, that you feel different than me. But we have got to band together because, liberty, freedom, it's not a given. We assume it is. That's essentially all most of us are familiar with. It's not a guaranteed thing. And so it's on us. So by all means, if you or individuals or even groups that you might think that would be interested in me or my message, by all means, keep at it until you're able to get a hold of me. If you want to be involved in a campaign, if you want to contribute in any way, please. And I'm at fault for not having everything set up right now, but as we speak, I'm up in Sydney, Montana, driving a sand truck, and it's a great opportunity. I've got a great boss. He's been very helpful, and other people have been really helpful to me. But if you're willing to be part of something that's not going to go away after the election, it's not going to go away after next election, but it's going to keep going, and it's going to thrive, and it's going to be a major player in the politics of America, I encourage you to jump aboard.
Absolutely, and as you get new information, you can send it to me, and we'll keep the audience updated on what you're doing. And also, folks, I mean, Reed's a Republican here out in Idaho, but let's say that you out in the listening audience are a Democrat out in Massachusetts who wants to run. Maybe you have some liberal stances on certain issues, but you also know that Building 7 was an obvious controlled demolition, and you're going to be unapologetically including it in your platform. You can run too. This is not a political issue, as was stated before. It's going to take some politics maybe to expose it, but it's not a partisan issue. That's really the terminology I should be using. It's not a partisan issue. And how great would it be if you had candidates all over the country in the next election or the election after it from both parties talking about Building 7. It would show how inclusive this topic really is. And of course it is, because Building 7 is not Republican or Democrat. Okay, this building that fell over a decade ago is not beholding to any particular political party. It's a building that fell when it shouldn't have. And it's an obvious just blemish on the face of the 9/11 official story, 9/11 being an event that still affects us to this day. So it is the most important issue, and it trumps partisanship, it trumps politics. So you need to get out there and run and do whatever you can. And again, if you don't think you have the experience, or you don't think that you have the ability to mount a successful campaign, you don't have to win necessarily your first time. I mean, fight to win. Don't sandbag yourself. But the ultimate goal doesn't have to be to win. It can just be to insert the issue into the public's mind, get into the debates. Oh, my God, can you imagine having a 9/11 truth person up there on the stage with the Republican and Democrat Party? And that's another thing, too. You can run as an independent. You can look into the rules for your district for doing that. But, I mean, there's so many ways that you can do this. And another thing, I forgot to mention this earlier, I think a lot of people tend to take themselves too seriously. And, of course, you should respect yourself and present yourself in a way that shows you have confidence and are comfortable in your own skin. But you got to also have a sense of humor about things, too. So if something doesn't work out, something doesn't, you fall flat on your face in one aspect of something, just brush it off. It's not a big deal. I mean, what we're trying to do is very hard. And I don't think anybody has ever had to deal with a situation like we've got with the post 9/11 world and the realization of what 9/11 really was coming to us so quickly. I don't think any group of people have ever had to deal with this before. So there's some room for error here, and you just got to roll with it, because you can't let yourself burn out. You can't let yourself become one of the victims of 9/11 too here in the aftermath of it. So that's something I hope that people can carry with them too, is it's okay to make mistakes. Just roll with it. Try to have a good time along with doing the serious work too.
There's something, what we're talking about right now, Andrew, there's something that I want to bring up, and it's on about Republican or Democrat. I am seriously considering leaving the Republican Party. Now, the state of Idaho Republicans have a convention the middle of June in Moscow, Idaho. I don't know that I will make it up there. I think it's a priority that I need to somehow make happen. But I am considering starting another party. I have a name, and I don't want to give that name. And I don't know if it's organized. It may have been organized in the past, but if it hasn't been organized in the past, I am prepared, and I don't see a way of avoiding this, to start a new party in the state of Idaho and run from that party in the future. And now this is just evolving, quickly. Like when I was up in western Idaho, up in the Panhandle and into southwestern Idaho, everything was just kind of unfolding, day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute at times. So, I don't see how I stay a Republican. Is the Republican establishment, and I don't expect the people that are in, leadership roles in the Republican Party in the state of Idaho to do anything about this. I mean, is that a cop-out? Maybe they're just not geared for that, okay? So I don't want to be too harsh on these fellas and these women. But if the Republican Party refuses to address this adequately, which I do not see happening. They've had 12 years. No one seems to be really excited about it, and those that know about it, not a peep has come. Therefore, this is going to be inevitable. This is inevitable of starting another party. This is very serious, Andrew. If anybody wants to be involved or wants to have input, please contact me. Can I give my email out here?
Absolutely.
Okay. My email is my first name and then my last name, but in between is my middle initial C. So Reed C. McCandless, ReedCCMCCANDLESS @gmail.com. Thank you.
That's a great idea. And actually, I remember Sandra Hicks tried to get a truth party started a couple of years ago. That was the name of it. I don't know what the status of it is now, to be honest with you. But it was a good idea. And there's a number of things that can happen when you form a political party. You can set the standards for how the primary is going to go, and not make it so hard for people to jump through a million hoops that they have to have a ton of money in the bank to do it. But you can also do a lot of the work and help people file. As far as I know, I'm not a political expert here, but you can also do fusion voting. So if you have somebody who's in one of the mainstream, well, quote unquote mainstream parties, I should refrain from saying words like that. But if you have somebody who's in the Republican or Democrat Party who happens to be more sympathetic to 9/11 Truth, to a new investigation into Building 7, and no one happens to be running in their district at the time for your political party, you can encourage your supporters to vote for that candidate. That's what the Working Families Party does, is that they pick the candidate in each district that more represents whatever their ideals are. Usually it's the Democrats. Apparently they may have had some Republicans at one point, but usually it's Democrats. On their face, that's what they say they're doing, is they're picking the candidate that most represents their ideals. Well, a 9/11 Truth Party could do the same thing. If you don't have a certain person running in a particular district, but you have a candidate that is more sympathetic, even if it's like the Libertarian candidate, who might be more sympathetic to 9/11 Truth. Who knows? Or a Green Party candidate, right, someone like that. They can get behind him, and then you get the name out there on the ballot, because that helps too. It's like free advertising. When somebody comes in and they see, let's just say, John Smith, he might be a Green Party candidate, and his main issues might be, environmental stuff, but then they see the 9/11 Truth Party on there, and then it also says John Smith, and then if a voter goes in there and votes for him on the 9/11 Truth line, that sends a message to John Smith if he gets into office or plans to run again, that this is where the people stand. Or if you have some Democrat who maybe behind the scenes tells you that he thinks 9/11 Building 7 should be investigated, or someone like Jim McDermott, who said it right on C-SPAN, the merits further investigation, and then they see people voting for him on the 9/11 Truth Party line, then that sends a message to him that he should be serious about it. Go ahead.
I don't want someone that's lukewarm like Jim McDermott, okay? And no offense to him intended. This is how serious and inevitable this is, Andrew. I expect this party to expand in all 50 states, in the territories, in Puerto Rico, and so on. And I expect to run a presidential candidate. I've got a guy in mind, and trust me, he won't want to hear about this, with ties to the Pentagon. The Pentagon is important. No matter what has gone on or is going on or will go on, the Pentagon remains important, and we need ties. And there's a guy that I want to run from this new party in 10 years from now. In 2024, this party, it's inevitable. I mean, it's going to happen. Maybe in the next few months we'll start it. I mean, like I say, this is just evolving so quickly, But I'm not even going to say expect. We will have a candidate for president in 2024. Okay? And I expect there's going to be so much change between now and then that I expect that third party can and will win the presidency. I mean that. That's how dead serious I am. I'm not calling up on this radio station. I'm not making an effort just because, I have some little small aspect that I want to raise awareness to. Okay? This is where American politics is going to go. This is ready to tip. It's at the tipping point, and whoever I don't have a take on who's in the next after Obama, the next two 4-year sessions of the presidential office. I don't have a take on that. Okay. I mean, I do, but I don't really have a grasp. But I think during those 8 years, there will be such turmoil that there will be a third party from this party that I'm going to, and other people have talked about it. Okay, that's why I don't want to give its name. I want to wait till we get organized and we have the legal right to use the name in all 50 states. But that's how serious this is, and that's where this is going.
And if that happens, folks, you heard it here first. So mark this as a potential historical broadcast. And the energy is there. People are waking up to the problems left and right now. So it wouldn't surprise me if another party comes up and knocks the socks off of these other two, this two-headed monster that we have running things now. It's absolutely ridiculous. People want to change, and people still believe in America. I want them to as well, and I want them to do it through the political process because that's the most peaceful way of doing it and the best way to get the word out. And it would be, what a great story. I always say this, what a great story it's going to be for America when we overcome this big lie, 9/11, Building 7, and finally gets acknowledged what really happened that day. And the revolution will come not with bullets, but with votes, with words, with change in people's intellect. Reed, we are out of time. I want to thank you so much for coming on this show and talking about that, and good luck with what you're doing. We're going to keep updated and keep the audience updated on what your next move is.
Anytime, and thank you, Andrew. We'll be in touch.
Thanks for listening. Remember, you can hear this program every Thursday night on No Lights Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download the show by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.